Today on CityCast Seattle, what the city's housing growth plans could look like under Katie Wilson's administration, the crocodile in peril, and a listener's proposal for car-free streets. But first, I want to know, Chase Hutchinson, critic and journalist at the Seattle Times and a contributor to KOW, have you seen the Aurora Borealis?
No, I have not. Unfortunately, I have not been lucky enough to see that in real life.
I feel like there were all these reports that it could be visible, but I don't know that I've laid eyes on it this time around. What about you, Ryan Packer, contributing editor at The Urbanist?
Have I ever seen it? Yes, during the time a couple of years ago when it was super visible. I was night for about 10 minutes and took pictures of the sky and came up with nothing.
Yeah, I feel like the camera catches it way better than your naked eye can. Well, fingers crossed that it makes another appearance. I feel like it's always fun and kind of a treat when we might get a glimpse from here. But yeah, let's jump right into things with city news. So Ryan, I know that you recently published a piece in The Urbanist about Katie Wilson's new housing growth plans. So catch us up a little bit. What do we know so far about what we might see from her administration in coming years?
Yeah, so, Katie Wilson took office, a couple of weeks ago, right in the middle of a big update to the city's growth plan. And a lot of people were wondering whether she was going to kind of take the Bruce Harrell proposals and kind of scrap them and start all over or build on them. And, that was the kind of the core of my story about kind of their approach so far in the first few weeks of this administration, which is going to be the kind of build on it approach. Katie Wilson had been pretty critical of Bruce Harrell's growth plan, saying it didn't go far enough. But, some people had been kind of asking for Katie Wilson to kind of reopen, what's called the comprehensive plan, the overarching document that kind of guides the city's growth. But ultimately, that's going to be a lot messier than actually just kind of going with what we already have ready. Okay? Bruce Harrell's plan had 30 neighborhood centers, which are kind of these new little focuses of commercial and density activity, areas like Tangletown and Madrona, Fauntleroy. And Katie Wilson's approach is like, well, maybe we could have more of those. Bruce Harrell's planned upzones along frequent transit corridors, so allowing apartment buildings closer to the city's most frequent buses. And her approach is going to be like, well, maybe we can make those, more robust, extending out further from the actual bus stops. And so rather than going a whole new approach, she's going to basically take a build it approach.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I had spoken with some people in some of those neighborhoods back last year when I don't know that Harrell had officially adopted the new comprehensive plan yet. And folks in historically more quiet neighborhoods, like in particular, I talked with several people in Maple Leaf, which, if you're familiar with it, North Seattle, a lot of neighborhood streets next to parks, just generally pretty quiet. A lot of folks felt that half a block from major bus routes, which I believe is what the comprehensive plan kind of designates as a neighborhood center area, they felt that it put too much of their neighborhood in the center of things. And I know you had mentioned in your piece that Wilson might upzone a larger difference from transit corridors. Does that include like all buses, or is that referring more to like a hub, like a light rail station?
Oh, it's not just light rail stations. It's kind of based on how frequently the bus comes. So
how frequent is it supposed to be under that plan?
I think it's basically, all the routes that are 15-minute service or better, approximately. Ironically, I think, the fact that these neighborhood centers are so focused, they're so limited in scope, it actually kind of puts more pressure on existing business districts like Maple Leaf. Everybody loves Cloud City coffee, but it actually kind of takes the pressure off an individual. A larger neighborhood center ultimately may be less impactful to the actual community. So that could actually be a kind of an upside to kind of thinking more bold.
Yeah. Chase, what do you think about all this?
We had a mayoral election this year. I did not know. You're telling me for the first time.
We're breaking the news to
I
Chase
know.
here.
No, it was a really good piece. I recommend everyone go read Ryan, and then I think it was also your colleague Doug that helped contribute reporting. I guess the question I would ask, to boil it down, is this Wilson moderating a position at all in your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's more pragmatism around what's achievable with the resources that are at the disposal. But right now, I think it's kind of pretty clear that they're going to take the plan that was already in motion and try and push it to do what they want to do.
Yeah, it would take a lot of resources to completely scrap that plan, which took, years to come up with and then, replace it with something else. So it makes sense on a pragmatic level to just build on what was already, figured out.
Yeah, and Seattle actually has to do a couple things to get in compliance with state law, or we could end up getting in trouble in terms of actually following through. When we pass a comprehensive plan that says we're going to do things, we kind of have to do the things that it says. So
Right. Environmental review, right, I think is one of those things.
or just following, if the zoning that the comprehensive plan says that we have kind of needs to be adopted relatively quickly. You can't just say we have neighborhood centers, but we have no idea what the zoning is in those areas.
I mean, I know that before the comprehensive plan was officially adopted, there was a good amount of pushback in several neighborhoods about it. I mean, do we feel like the interim has any room for additional pushback? Like, now that we've adopted that plan, is that just the plan, or could there be more pushback at stages that have not yet happened?
I'm definitely watching for pushback, particularly when it comes to these upzones on transit corridors. The neighborhood centers are kind of baked. There could be some softening, but I think if we're going to see some walking back, it's going to be after groups in maybe Wallingford, Queen Anne are unhappy about allowing apartment buildings along North 40th Street, where the 31, 32 buses run. Upper Queen Anne has had a lot of opposition to the idea of ending apartment bans on the top of the hill. So I think that's kind of where I'm watching to see if advocacy in the neighborhoods is going to get some traction.
Yeah. So, I mean, assuming that everything goes according to plan and maybe even gets expanded a little bit according to what Wilson might like to do, what would these neighborhoods actually look like? Like, I mean, let's go back to Maple Leaf as an example. You mentioned there might be like less pressure on Cloud City in particular to be, like kind of the central hub area there. I mean, we'll see more housing, we'll see more restaurants. What's the end goal here that you can imagine?
Yeah, more housing close to transit, more ground floor commercial spaces, more street life and vibrancy. Basically, is the goal.
I love street life. We should
Yeah.
make t-shirts. I love street life and vibrancy.
No, I feel like it'd be truly Seattle if you got a T-shirt that was like, "I hate street life and vibrancy." Like
I would rather
I love the
everyone be
darkness.
quiet and leave me alone.
So, in other news that Wilson has recently announced, her administration said last week that she'd be turning one of the lanes of busy Denny Way into a bus lane. I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation for a while. Like, around her campaign, people were talking about fixing the late being, L and then the number 8, because the 8 bus was always getting held up in traffic. What does this mean for the future, and how quickly are we going to be able to implement that, Ryan?
So the executive order announced last week sets a due date for a implementation plan. So it doesn't actually set a deadline that we have to see red paint on the ground, as much as many transit advocates in Seattle would love to see. That deadline is in April, so they have a bit of time to figure out a design that will work. Hopefully not cause too much traffic back up onto, Fairview Avenue, Westlake, where we have buses and
All
streetcars.
the feeder streets, yeah.
And so, but I think I see this more as a big signal that Katie Wilson is going to take SDOT in a different direction. This is, a bus that she uses. And so I think she knows what needs to happen on Denny. But I hope that this is kind of a larger signal that the mayor's office is not always going to go with the most conservative option when it comes to assuming that traffic impacts are going to be a reason to cancel big transit projects.
Chase, have you had to sit on the 8 before?
No, I have not, because I am a Tacoma person who unfortunately cannot take the bus all the way up there. But I wish I could have been part of the Race the Late events If
Right.
people were not aware of those, that's where they would just like on foot prove that they could be faster than the bus, or on bike. Bike, I feel like you definitely kill it. There'd be no competition.
Depending on which way you're going, I feel like uphill definitely is harder, but I believe that was the direction it went in and people still beat it. That's a large part of why I started riding a bike in the city, actually, is like I found that between the waiting for the bus and then waiting for the bus to get through traffic, especially at rush hour, I was like, well, this actually is way faster.
So we'll lose out on that fun spectacle once this is improved.
I'm that's a risk I'm willing to take personally. But we'll see how long it takes to actually get that all implemented. We'll still have time for that fun for a
I
few
was
months
gonna
to
say
come
yes.
until that paint is on the ground. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the fate of the crocodile. So, Chase, when CityCast Seattle first launched, you actually broke the news for us that the small venues, the Hereafter and Madame Lou's, which were part of the Crocodile, were closing. So now we're hearing that the Crocodile is in peril. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that.
Well, it's good that you reiterated that because every single time I'm going to be like, it's just Madame Lou's and Hereafter that have closed. The Crocodile, as of now, is still open and operating.
Yes.
However, when we broke that news, the first question everyone was asking is like, well, what about the rest of it? What is the long-term future? And currently, it's that it's going to be up for sale. The logistics of that are outlined in this really good story in the Seattle Times. But essentially, they're entering into a receivership, which is a like structured process for the sale that will have an attorney that is appointed as the receiver. It's a neutral third party who is going to manage the Crocodile's assets and handle the sale. How long that takes, that's kind of an open question. In the meantime, the Crocodile is still open and operating. I have heard that some of the employees are just finding out about this now from the reporting.
Yeah, that's really too bad.
It's always a tough thing, but as of now, I have not heard that there are any layoffs happening now. There were layoffs that happened before with the closing of Madame Lou's and Hereafter. That was of roughly 100 employees. But it is a big turning point for the Crocodile in terms of them reopening at this location was a big, we're expanding. We are taking a big leap. Now we're seeing that in addition to the closures from last year, the Crocodile is not going to be the Crocodile under the same ownership. It's a new chapter for them. It's obviously everyone is hopeful that they continue on because I think Seattle has already seen its fair share of loss of venues and music spaces, even though the Hereafter folks were also comedy and movies and lots of other things. The main space of the Crocodile, that potentially being lost would be a pretty significant hitter.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think part of after hearing the news about Madame Lou's and the Hereafter, people were like, well, at least the Crocodile itself seems like it's still doing okay. Like maybe this is a move that will help it be able to stay open. And I know that we all would love it to stay open and that hopefully this is just a little hump they need to get over. Ryan, have you spent much time at the Crocodile? Have you been to shows there?
I have. I have a fondness for the old Crocodile.
Tell me about the old Crocodile.
It's a little more dingy. It's one of those kind of old Seattle spaces that I probably have a more rosy view in hindsight than at the time. But I thought the new space was great. It was a great sign of the kind of rebounding of the music economy. But we're kind of seeing a lot of those rebounds kind of ultimately bounce a little bit right now.
Yeah. In talking about this story this morning with my producers, we were talking about how Belltown has just changed over the years. So, I mean, Ryan, you mentioned that it used to be a little grungier at the Crocodile. I mean, what have you all observed about Belltown over the years?
I think the bringing in of the Crocodile was an attempt to reverse what was maybe a bit of a trend that people were seeing things go away. And as of now, the intention is still to keep the Crocodile in Belltown. The Seattle Times story notes that Marcus Charles, a Seattle entrepreneur, is hoping to keep it there, that
Okay.
there's currently an organization being brought together to try and put forth an offer that would also include knock on wood, reopening Madame Lou's and Hereafter. But I'm trying to think, when I walk to the Crocodile, I don't know if there's any like big other space like that in Belltown, at least any that comes to mind. I feel like if the Crocodile were to leave that space after making a big announcement to be there, that would change the face of Belltown. And I don't know where else they could really go easily. Like, opening up a venue is very difficult. Like, just getting something off the ground is not an easy undertaking. And so I think in addition to wanting to keep it in Belltown, you would want to keep it there because it's there. You wouldn't want to have to like go through this whole rigmarole again.
Yeah, what do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think Belltown's kind of lost a little bit of its unique identity, kind of becoming a little bit of an extension of downtown. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a theater company on Capitol Hill called Theater Schmieder that was there for decades, and they ended up moving to a new space on 3rd Avenue in Belltown, and they just weren't able to make it work down there for a number of reasons. And, you know, I think that's kind of indicative of the kind of environment. Capitol Hill kind of remained the clear nightlife district. Belltown is always kind of a little, you know, right below it in terms of the districts you go to hang out at, you know, at bars. But like the kind of big venues, there's not that many left in Belltown.
Yeah, no, my producers were saying they used to go out in Belltown all the time, but it does feel like right now Belltown has tried to adopt more of a maybe artsy center. I mean, you mentioned, Ryan, like, of course, Capitol Hill is still kind of the default top place for neighborhood for like arts community, but you know, we've got the Belltown Art Walk there now. It's the second Friday of every month, year round, which is great. But there's also, you know, venues like Common Area Maintenance where, you know, folks are maybe going to do more readings and events there. I've heard also just people talking about like what living in Belltown is like. And one thing that comes up a lot is that there are not really any like grocery stores nearby. So it makes it kind of a difficult area to live in and be on foot.
Sounds like all these things are somewhat interconnected. that that as you lose out on some of these bigger spaces, potentially there's less things growing there. That, like, I think of the Crocodile, you then have more foot traffic of people going to see shows and going out to other places and people wanting to live there. And obviously the question of like food deserts or easy access to groceries and healthy food is like a big part of it. That might be its own kind of separate thing, but you would hope if more people were like, we want to live in this space because there's great venues and arts and culture and things that enrich your life, that would maybe bring more kind of care to people's day-to-day lives. You hope it doesn't go the other way, but it sounds like these are all kind of interconnected, interlocked questions for this city broadly to
Yeah. Ryan, is there anything in the comprehensive plan that you feel like might help with this or be of relevance to this larger issue?
Well, it's funny. I'm working on a story about there's a draft plan for downtown specifically, which includes Belltown and other districts like Pioneer Square, looking at the ability to add housing to achieve some of these goals, which is looking kind of bleak right now in terms of interest rates and the uphill battle to get these big projects in downtown, which has very high land prices to actually pencil. I feel like Belltown has always been a little bit neglected. You know, it doesn't have a library of its own. It doesn't have really grocery stores. The community center it had for a while closed down, and there wasn't really a whole lot of energy put into replacing it. And so I feel like it's always been a little bit neglected.
Well, rooting for Belltown, rooting for the Crocodile, hoping that we get a buyer who wants to make sure that that stays an important part of our city's fabric. We love our listeners, and there's nothing we love more than a listener email. So shout out to Harrison Jerome, who heard our episode a few weeks back, where we encourage listeners to send us their ideas about where you'd like to see car-free areas. And boy, did Harrison deliver. He has a whole list for us, and I wanted to have Ryan and Chase go through this list with me and discuss the ones that we are excited about, what questions we might have about the logistics. You know, this is all pie in the sky, but hey, if anybody who has any power in the city to make this happen is listening, then just know that there might be interest from your constituents. Okay, so the first one, and I feel like this is an obvious one and one that gets talked about quite often in Seattle, but also on this show, is Pike Place Market. Any immediate reactions to that? Are we for it? Are we against it? What questions do we have about how that would work?
Well, we're trying it right now. Pike Place Market is doing a pilot for a whole year on restricting access at the front door, only letting through vehicles with a pass. And so far, I think all the signs point to that being a huge success. Sales are up year over year. People are clearly pretty happy about being able to walk down the middle of Pike Place. It is a concentrated selfie hotspot these days.
Right.
And so, I think, one thing's missing right now is the winter time. So they took a lot of the outdoor seats. This is a whole street that people kind of can walk down, but they can't grab, a humbao and grab a seat, which is kind of weird. They have to go all the way down to, Steinberg Park or the Overlook Walk, which seems kind of weird. You'd like to have them right there. And through the summertime, you can. And so, obviously, I think there are ways we could improve that, but I think it's clearly going well. I think a big question is whether you're going to be able to kind of extend that broader. A lot of people look at First Avenue as kind of an underutilized asset. There's 5 lanes of traffic. And so I think there's definitely room for that. Although I think there'll be a lot of opposition to getting rid of parking along First Avenue, especially with that Pike Place closure.
Chase, what do you think?
I had talked about this when the news broke on KUOW, and my thought is still just like we're doing this for a year to try it out. I think that's just to be like, we're taking our time, but really the intention is to...
We're easing everyone into it in case anyone's freaking out about it now. Like, you have some time to get used to it.
Yeah. We're trying to gently show how this can work, and I don't see any downside. It seems like there's only upsides. Foot traffic, more community space, people coming together. Yeah, it feels like it's a no-brainer. I don't think I'm going to be opposed to like many car-free zones on this list, but this one is like in particular, like we're already doing it. It seems to be working. I haven't heard any big complaints. If there are any complaints, definitely drop them.
All right, next one. 10th and Pike on Capitol Hill. I'm imagining we just make like a Chop Chaz super block for anyone who was around during the 2020 protest where we had the autonomous zone. I gotta say, it was quite nice to have that space be walkable. And as someone who has attempted to drive there before, it's not that pleasant because you're stopping every 5 feet for a pedestrian anyway. I don't know. Your thoughts? I'll start with you, Chase, since Ryan went last.
I'm just making a note here that you're calling for a reinstitution of the autonomous zone starting now.
Oh no.
I'm kidding.
I'm gonna get canceled.
I'm kidding.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm for that. I think that's the thing I think about with like the driving equation of it all is it's so slow. Like if you were to ever kind of find yourself down these spots, you immediately like, well, that was a mistake. So why not just take it out of the equation? Have it be that it's just already kind of a free space. You obviously want to see increased public transit so that people can get to these places and partake in them so that we don't start to have problems with like traffic just being like pushed elsewhere. So like multifaceted, but still very pro.
Right.
Yeah. So the Capitol Hill Superblock has been talked about for a long time. I imagine this is going to be pretty near and dear to Katie Wilson's heart as a neighborhood resident. We kind of did some pilots of this. We shut down Pike on Saturday nights. I think that was like right before the pandemic. Kind of fizzled for a couple of reasons. I think people didn't really expect it. The street ends were blocked by cop cars, which wasn't really very welcoming. The implementation wasn't quite there. But what Chase says about the pushing traffic elsewhere, I think brings up a point that I want to kind of reiterate about all of these issues is that, there's so much opportunity for car-free spaces. 1 out of every 4 acres of Seattle is roadway or sidewalk. We kind of have to have a plan for where car traffic goes. Right now, the default is kind of car traffic goes everywhere. And so this is what other cities call a circulation plan. So basically, because in Capitol Hill, you're going to have opposition from LA Bay Boat Company and, Oddfellows.
All the businesses.
Exactly. And
where
so
people are going.
If you can make the case that people can get to your parking garage. Here's how they'll do that. Here's all the space that you don't need to do that to get to the Poquitos parking lot. Having that circulation plan is kind of going to make it so much easier to be able to pave the way, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to do a super block. I don't know what that means. It sounds like you're shutting down the entire neighborhood. I don't like that.
Do those plans include rideshare, like Lyft and Uber? I'm thinking about all the people who are going out who, I mean, in an ideal world, people would be able to walk home or to walk to a bus or to walk to light rail. It might not always be possible. I feel like people often will call a Lyft or Uber, especially, once it gets to be like do those plans include like a place for people to get?
I mean, we have that right now in Capitol Hill. There's designated rideshare zones, which I implemented even before the pandemic.
Dang, I must have just missed that. Okay, well, definitely outing myself as a person who typically just walks to light rail and does not stay out that late.
I was going to say we're fellow homebodies. We're not taking those ride shares out late at night.
I'm like, you guys, I have to go home because the light rail's going to stop. All right. We've talked about the Fremont Bridge car-free potential on this show before. I don't want to spend too long. I think the idea would be that it could be just a bus or bike only bridge, or at least there'd be just one lane for car traffic, leaving the other lane open for buses or for bikes.
I feel like that one car lane, people wouldn't want to take it anyway at a certain point. Like, it becomes so bad that you're like, well, you might as well take the bus. And that's a positive thing. Hopefully that can lead kind of towards pushing people towards more public transit, because I imagine that would be quite a backup.
Yeah, I think we should try it out. See how it goes.
Yeah.
Yes to most of these. Unless there's like someone that has like a huge downside that you've snuck in here.
Okay, I'm going to lump a couple of these together. One is closing University Way to cars. Another is closing Ballard Ave to cars. So in my mind, both of these kind of go together in that they are major thoroughfares in the neighborhoods they exist in, and also that there are already events that shut those streets down for some amount of stuff to cars. On Ballard Ave every Sunday for the farmers market, most of it is closed up. So Harrison brought up the idea that, especially for University Way being closed, that this could be a way for people to really hang out and eat in the streets and bring some revitalization. Like, I don't know if you all have been to the Ave lately. A lot of restaurants and businesses have closed or are closing. I feel like the vibrancy of that street has really kind of dwindled in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a place where we should try stuff out. We got buses on the Ave. We'll have to figure out where those go. Maybe it's a transit only street. But I think there's huge opportunities. Obviously, the sidewalks on the Ave are way too crowded. And you're right, we shut that down pretty regularly. Ballard Avenue, I think the common thread here is kind of going to be bringing the businesses along. It's a big change and, a shock to the system. And like I was saying, like getting that right, a one-way street, ensuring that deliveries can still happen, kind of being really, really intentional about it.
Yeah, got to get the buy-in from the businesses. I feel like they're going to be kind of the primary beneficiaries in theory, but also I imagine that, there are these plans. Okay, last one that we'll cover. This is perhaps the most interesting one, in my opinion, on this list. Developing 4th and Pine downtown as a car-free space as a type of town square. So Harrison says, call me old-fashioned, but I believe every city needs a centrally located town square, and that the closest we currently have is like Westlake Square, which I feel like, as a center for protests for a while was a little bit vibrant, but I don't know anyone who's like, meet me at Town Square at Westlake Center. And I do think it could be cool. His suggestion is that maybe we could put in food trucks, people could hang out. Is that the right spot? Is that the spot you feel like is actually a town center?
I don't know if there's ever going to be like a perfect town center. Like it's always going to be like, oh, this is maybe a little bit off the beaten path for someone, but I think he makes a compelling case for it. I am imagining just like for some reason Harrison is like a hear ye person in the town square
The town
saying
crier.
exactly. Come all come have some food.
Well, Fourth and Pine actually used to be car free 40 years ago. So
No way.
this was kind of the long saga of building Westlake Mall and Westlake Park, which was actually approved during the 60s. It took till the 80s to actually get it to be built. But it was originally car free right when they opened the downtown bus tunnel under Third Avenue. The kind of deal was that Nordstrom wanted to come back downtown and go into the space they're in now. And there was a public vote on whether they should reopen that stretch to cars, and it succeeded, kind of with the threat of the idea of Nordstrom not revitalizing downtown. A lot of those things echo today in terms of our discussions around downtown revitalization. They're currently renovating Westlake Park to do a lot of overhauls for the World Cup. In terms of that town square, that always was Westlake. We had the stage where you do protests. They demolished the stage. The arch is gone. And so I think the street, could be that stage.
Yeah.
And the Downtown Seattle Association has done concerts in the street in the summer. Are really fun. They bring out a lot of people. And I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah, I think also in light of recent protests in town, I've heard more people talking about how with the loss of Westlake Square's stage, that it's not completely clear where people gather anymore. I guess Seattle Center has become a space in the waterfront area. I think it could be time for a new town center or a new old town center. I did not realize that we had already done this. History repeats itself if we don't know the history, apparently.
Ye old town center coming back.
Ye old town center. Well, Harrison says with the right investments in materials, lighting, utilities, and planning, we could conjure completely new amazing spaces if only we find the ability to see beyond what has always been. We deserve this. And I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Harrison, for suggesting this. Thank you so much, Ryan Packer, for joining us to chat about it.
So happy to be here.
And Chase Hutchinson, thanks as always for joining us.
Here, Harrison. Thank you so much.
That's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. I'm your host, Jane Sihu. And listeners, really, be like Harrison. Email us. Tell us your fun little facts. Tell us your news tips, your questions, your hot goss. Send us even more suggestions for car-free areas. I don't know. Go nuts. You can email us at seattle@citycast.fm. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. And hey, did you know you can watch full episodes of CityCast Seattle on YouTube? That way, you can see our beautiful faces. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at CityCast Seattle. And if you're enjoying the podcast, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. If you leave us a little review, that's super helpful. And just tell your friends about us if you're enjoying what you're listening to. You can also get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. Until next time, see ya, Seattle.